And thank you for joining us as well. After the strategic city of Palmyra was liberated by Syrian government forces and its allies, soldiers continued to clear the area from mines set by Islamic State while they were retreating. The Defense Ministry says it will send anti-mine experts and military robots to help clear the explosives. Officials say numerous booby traps were laid by retreating ISIL fighters. The city's strategic importance lies in its location in central Syria, situated between Damascus and Islamic State's main stronghold, Raqqa. And by recapturing Palmyra, the Syrian army can now use the city as a stepping stone for offensives against terrorist-held territory in the east. In these aerial pictures here, if you look down to the southwest, it comes up and zooms in right there. You can see the Greco-Roman monuments. Now, the head of the Syrian museums said today that the most cherished landmarks have been either destroyed or damaged by ISIL. And we spoke to a senior advisor to the Syrian president about the liberation of Palmyra.
The Western coalition only pretended it came to fight terrorism a year before Russia's air force. If this coalition was sincere in its attempts to fight terrorism, Palmyra would never have fallen. After all, when terrorists came to Palmyra, satellites could have seen them, and it would have been possible to strike them then. But the Western coalition did not lift a finger. I heard President Putin told President Assad that the world has a lot of oil, coal, mines, but only one Palmyra. I hope Western leaders will hear that, because Prime Minister David Cameron, for example, did not say a word about the liberation of Palmyra. None of them congratulated the Syrian people or the Syrian army, despite the fact that the terrorists who captured Palmyra are the same terrorists that carried out attacks in Brussels, Paris, and the US. The cancer of terrorism is the same for everyone.
Well, for the most part, there's only been a muted reaction to the significant victory via Western leaders. Our Washington correspondent Guy Chichakan reports on the response from the U.S. State Department.
The U.S. State Department views the Syrian armies pushing Daesh out of Palmyra with Russia's help as a positive development.
Have you guys come to a conclusion about whether or not ISIS getting driven out of Palmyra by the Assad regime, helped by the Russians, is a good thing?
The short answer is yes, we think it's a good thing.
Would you go so far as to congratulate the Assad government for its military success?
I don't think, I think I just would characterize it the way I just did.
Last week, when John Kirby and Secretary Kerry were traveling, the State Department was not at all certain how to react to the Syrian army's advances in Palmyra. The spokesperson was clearly struggling not to give Assad forces any credit for taking on Daesh there. Take a listen.
Replacing Daesh's barbaric rule with Assad's tyranny is not a great trade-off or a great solution. You know, the Syrian people should not have to decide between ISIL and Assad.
It seems U.S. officials, for a little while, found themselves torn between their stated priority, which is to defeat Daesh, and the long-held disdain for Bashar Assad.
Palmyra, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, has suffered massively at the hands of Islamic State, with ancient monuments destroyed. UNESCO's head of the Emergency Preparedness and Response Unit spoke of the relief he felt now the area had been liberated and the people could actually live on in a safe manner.
The key is that these attacks against culture in Syria, but also in Iraq and in many other places these days, are also attacks against people. They're attacks against their identity. The ultimate goal in destructing, for example, the Temple of Bel, is not to destruct stone, but to harm people, to destroy their sense of belonging, to destroy them as a community. It's not just about stones, is it about people? At the end of the day, it's, I think, a legitimate choice. Luckily, I think the stone of Palmyra is there, so at least it would be possible to be able to extract the same stone with which the temples were done.
Russia's Hermitage Museum, one of the largest and oldest in the world, has offered to help restore Palmyra to its pre-war state. The museum's director says retaking the city from the terrorists is not enough, and it's just as important to restore its beauty.
For us, Palmyra is a very important place that's close to the heart. When Daesh captured Palmyra and started blowing it up, as they previously had done in Syria and Iraq, we met with our archaeologist friends from Germany to discuss how Palmyra could be saved and restored. Museums across the world started a campaign for gathering data and resources for Palmyra's restoration as soon as it would be liberated. As we can see from the photos, the amount of destruction is enormous, but the city is not completely destroyed. The main symbol of Palmyra, the colonnade, is still standing.
Well, aside from Syria being a battleground to save the country's antiquities, it turns out there's also a fight going on there, though this one between two different American departments. Reports claim a CIA-armed group was forced out of its positions by other soldiers who were backed by the Pentagon. That story's coming up a bit later in the program.